Hello, wonderful audience. Of course, welcome is the first thing that we'll say, and indeed hello as well. That's pretty important, I think. This is a kind of a once-a-year affair, so it's a bit of a special one, actually. I know some of you, of course, have attended Semrush webinars before, but this one is a 2018-themed e-commerce online meetup. And of course, it's different in a number of different ways in that it's a little bit longer, in that we have three presentations. And those three presentations, of course, are given by some of the most epic people, quite frankly, in e-commerce on the face of God's earth today, as far as I'm concerned, in a number of different ways. That is the case. Now, first up, just to introduce you to our first speaker of the session, and that's, of course, Andrey. And Andrey is partner manager at Google, so that's what he does mostly during the day. He tends to ask people pretty much consistently, is your site on HTTPS? So we have that in common, at least. We're both annoying on the HTTPS front. He's really into learning. He's really into breaking the customer journey, inverted commas. I won't take any words out of his mouth, of course, but he's passionate about the open web in its largest context, of course. And we're trying to really get to a place where we talk about not only Mars, as Andrey might do occasionally here and there. We're talking about, of course, how e-commerce works from a platform perspective, from a paid search perspective, and indeed also thinking about the organic search too. Now, holding up the paid end of things is Elizabeth, who will maybe give us a wave, just depending there. Cool, thank you, Elizabeth, for that. Elizabeth is Senior Director of e-commerce growth at CommerceHub. She's in Seattle, so she's convenient to many of the best conferences. She also speaks at many of the best conferences, as I'm sure you probably know by having a little look at Elizabeth's profile in preparation for a webinar of this particular caliber. She also has a book, All-in-One Web Marketing for Dummies, which is pretty cool as well. Bit of a catch-all around all things on the web. Interestingly enough, when she's not speaking at conferences, she practices kendo, which I think is bloody amazing, actually. That's super cool. Also has a freakish knowledge of Simpsons trivia, so it's probably good on a pub quiz of some sort. That's me being very British there. But I would say between her love of small animals, which will be apparent in her talk, her love of kendo, and indeed, of course, her freakish knowledge of Simpsons, I'm sure we're probably in for a treat from the big brain that is Elizabeth in terms of all things paid and all things Google Express. Last but not least, Kevin. Now, Kevin is an animal of a different sort. Give us a wave, Kevin, if you're alive back there. Fabulous. Kevin's an SEO manager for BigCommerce, so he is, of course, the SEO guy in the mix. He is really interested in content. He is constantly exploring drop shipping and, of course, the concepts that all relate to fulfillment in the e-commerce space. And he is a bit of a prolific blogger, too. Apparently, he also raps. So maybe Kevin, just possibly, Kevin will give us some sort of summary-style rap in about 90 minutes' time of everything that Elizabeth and Andrey and he himself said. Maybe, if we're really nice to him and we ask him pretty nice questions, all things considered. But that's really who's here, who's in the room. And indeed, of course, you can see them, and they're all down the bottom of the screen, your screen, as it were, for right now. But I kind of just want to kick things off before we kind of get into the meat of Andrey's presentation, because Andrey will be up first. Now, I do encourage you in the YouTube live audience to ask us questions throughout. We won't be interrupting speakers or anything like that. We will be interrupting them quite a bit later in the presentation. But indeed, if you've got questions, do please pass them through. And we will, of course, ensure that some of those questions get answered to the best of our ability, at least. But I think probably to kick us off, really, the e-commerce space is all in flux, And in terms of nailing the e-commerce experience on mobile, and this was a question that's come up from everybody talking about this webinar, right up to the point that we are doing the webinar, what's the go-to place to start? Where should we begin with the whole mobile optimization piece? I mean, is it as important as we're all making it out to be? Or indeed, can we just get on with business as usual? And maybe you want to kick us off, Andrey, with your thoughts on that one, just to start the ball proverbially rolling.
Certainly, Aiden. Thanks for the great introduction there. It's certainly a pleasure to be here with you. It's certainly a pleasure to be here in the same company as Kevin and Elizabeth. It's it's pretty amazing to be joining people who've been doing this for such a long time and with such success, and Hopefully this is going to be useful for all of you out there, either early in the morning or late in the evening, watching us and trying to get some questions in. Mobile optimization, you say. I say to hell with mobile optimization. This is something from from 5 years ago. We don't have to think about mobile anymore. We have to think about every single form factor and every single device that a user might potentially have today or in 5 years from now. And we have to stop limiting ourselves to just thinking about desktop, just thinking about mobile. We have to be flexible, and we have to be on top of whatever it is that is out there. And the technologies that allow us to, with minimum effort, provide the best of experiences on each of those form factors, on each of those devices, without limiting ourselves to just one solution that is going to be the be-all and end-all of everything. Right? I don't know, when 10 years ago, Apple phones first came out, I think it took us a couple of years to realize just the kind of impact that we're going to have on the industry. But then all of a sudden, within a few years, everybody sort of dropped everything and started building iOS apps like there's no tomorrow. And literally, we nearly had no tomorrow because of it. Because after a while, we realized, well, that's not what everybody has. That's not the single sole device that anybody might use. So we're back in a place now where I think there's a realization that we just need to create experiences. We need to create experiences on the platforms that intersect across the most users and the most devices. And certainly, you mentioned my love of the web. One of the reasons that I love the web the most is that it is one of those platforms. It is one of those open platforms that allows anybody to get on it with minimum effort, that allows anybody to consume content from it with minimum effort, with almost no effort at all, on almost any device, almost anywhere, regardless of the connection. And partly what I'm going to talk to you about today is like a couple of things that you could do to your web presence that would make it, well, even more awesome, to be honest, and even more close to your end users, wherever they are and whatever device they might be on, and however they might be engaging with your content and your products. So I guess without further ado, I think this is the cue to me to kind of share my slides, make sure that everything works, be the kind of the guinea pig of this 90-minute long journey that we're going to take you on.
Yes, please. Kick it off, Andrey. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Aiden. Just give me an audio cue that everything's fine and that you're seeing my screen like it should be and everything's working fine.
All is well, my friend. Please continue.
Brilliant. So let's get on with it then. There are 1,000,001 things that we could talk about on the modern web and the little nitty-gritty detail of every single technology that you might be engaging with. But let's focus on just a couple of things today. And then if you're interested, we can certainly ask more in the questions. And hopefully you'll also be able to get a few useful resources from these presentations that will allow you to follow up and learn a bit more. So this is me, and this is what we're going to talk about, the checkout flow, and in particular, the process of creating accounts, of engaging with your users in a personalized way, and making it simpler for them to actually do what matters most to you, which is take their money and run. And this is exactly how much money. That is allegedly and supposedly, according to Statista anyway, the amount of web e-commerce this year. This includes everything. This cuts across mobile, web, apps, desktop, everything else. But this is all e-commerce, right? So this doesn't take into account stuff that is happening offline, and the volume is staggering. What is even more surprising is that at this kind of volume globally, we still expect to see this sort of growth rate over the next year, and in fact over this year, right? Because the number was for 2017, and this is the projected growth rate for this year, for 2018. This number corresponds to $500 billion globally, right? Of the pie that all of us are hoping to get a cut of. It is a pretty amazing number to be looking at, whichever way you look at it, from a percentage point of view or the absolute value. However, the most amazing and the most upsetting part of that number is that it could be 3 times as large. Because according to our studies, over two-thirds of people who get to the very end of the user journey on your web properties abandon it. That means that those people who already spent good money targeting through SEO, SEA, any other means, You spend good money retaining using great UX tactics, having a great, fast, seamless experience on your web property. Place stuff in your basket, in their baskets on your website, and are actually just almost ready to give you their money. 2/3 of them walk away at that point. That is not only amazing, that is what it makes me feel like. That is what it in fact should make all of us feel like. And there's truly no explanation for it other than we make it difficult for them to complete their journeys and to fulfill the initial purpose with which they actually reached out to whatever platform they were on and found your content and started interacting with it to get to a point, to get to the place where they wanted to be. Now, according to a study by Baymart, there's a bunch of reasons why people abandon their flow during checkout, but 2 of them stand out at the top. And these are the 2 that we're going to focus on the most during the next 10 minutes. It's the account creation process and the complicated checkout process, including the payment. Let's start with the payments. Now, payments are a pain, right? You need to collect a lot of information from a user to be able to get the money off their hands. There are many things that we could be diving into detail here, but fundamentally what we are aiming at is to find a solution that would allow us to minimize the number of interactions that a user has to do in order to get to where they want to be, which is with your product in their hands. Now, Google Pay is an umbrella of solutions that we've consolidated at the beginning of this year to offer you as developers and business owners the most seamless way to leverage the most information that Google has about our users to get them through your checkout process in one simple click. How does it work? Throughout the history of Google and throughout various properties that belong to the family of Google products, we have been collecting information, including users' credentials, payment credentials, addresses, phone numbers, and so on. They are stored securely and transparently for the users, which is very important. At any point, any one of you can log on to their account, check all the details, remove them, modify them, and so on, take them out. And we don't want to go into too much detail on that, but that's a very important point, that transparency and the control that users have. But nonetheless, having said that, there is a lot of data out there which we can use with the user's explicit consent. That gives us the ability to convert people who browse the web into people whom we like to call ready to pay. And there's a reason why we call them that. It's because they're literally ready to pay. As you will see from an example a little bit down the line, just how much of a difference this ability to leverage data that you've saved before in your browser at the point of checkout makes in your ability to not just quickly fulfill your transaction, but actually to fulfill that transaction at all. Let's mention first a couple of more details about the service, though, about this API and collection of interfaces. It's I'd say GPay in general is an agglomeration of UI elements, such as the Google Pay button, and the actual API through which you get the information that you need from the browser, from the operating system on which the user happens to be. It works seamlessly across various device form factors and various browsers. It is a single API, right? You don't have to worry about implementing a separate solution for, let's say, Chrome OS and then Android and so on. And it is available globally, right? There are no limits to where users could use Google Pay, as in there might be with specific payment apps that are limited by geography or limited by language. Moreover, Google Pay is not only available on the web very nicely, it is also available across all sorts of other devices that might be connected to the web, but might also be connected to the internet by other means. So if you have a multi-channel business, an omni-channel business where you conduct sales through the web, but also through other means, this could be a solution that allows you to create great savings and economies of scale, as well as these economies of time for your users across any device that you might be using. And last but not least, of course, very importantly, the interface that the user is presented is that you see on your screen right now, it can be click checked. So that very important, critical, and very sensitive user information that we present at the checkout point, thereby limiting the number of interactions that the user needs to do, cannot be taken over by a malicious third party. Now, I promised you some data on this, and I was talking about the ready-to-pay users. As you can see here, in one particular example, users who were presented with the ability to pay using Google Pay were 65% more likely to complete their booking. That is 65% more likely, not than people who had no data saved, not than people who had to go through a very complicated checkout flow. This is in comparison to those users who already had used the service before and had data saved with this provider. That means that the added simplicity of the UI that this product actually enables you to leverage works across the entire breadth of your users, whether they be somebody who visits your property for the first time, somebody who's engaged with it before, somebody who's engaged with it before on a different device or on a different browser. There's plenty of examples of different partners of ours, companies, great companies out there who've implemented this technology and are using it with great success. You can check them out. Definitely take a look at those services, see what that experience looks like over there in real life. And I think to sum up the first part of this quick chat is basically you should be aiming at getting rid of the notion of a checkout flow and replacing that so-called flow with just a single interaction that consists of one or a maximum of 2 taps that allows the user to get from where they are to where they want to be and where you want them to be, with their money in your pocket and your product or service delivered to their doorstep or to their device. Now check out these links for a bit more information and some advice, some best practices that you could be using as initial steps in the process of simplifying your checkout process, and also the implementation documentation, both from a business and a development point of view. And don't forget to check out this video from the recent Google I/O that covers a lot of what I've just been talking about in a lot more detail. Now, let's go to the second part of what I promised to talk to you about, which is the account creation process. There are 4 elements that make for a great sign-up or sign-in experience. And they are security, quality of accounts created, the friction or the lack of friction during that process, and of course the ease of implementation from a development point of view. Let's go through them one by one. I won't spend too much time on it, but let's just cover some of the basics. In terms of security, it is hugely challenging to create a system that allows users to generate strong passwords that are easy to remember or store safely, passwords that are not going to be reused across other platforms, thus exposing your service to the vulnerability of people that you have completely no control over. And even the best and strongest passwords do have a tendency to get stolen, exposing your service, again, as I said, to vulnerabilities that you have really no control over and can't protect yourself from. And the other aspect, the quality of the passwords, the quality of the accounts that are being created, is of course that there's a certain number of people who are out there to abuse your service, and they will purposefully enter fake information in the account field, thereby creating 2 problems for you. One, even if this is not malicious, even if it's just a mistake, you expose yourself, you spend time, waste your time on creating accounts that can be used, and you're also exposing yourself to spammers who are, frankly speaking, out there to abuse your service and actually do things that you wouldn't want them to be doing on your platform. And the other type of accounts that we get here is the other problem that we get with the account creation is that it's damn hard for people to actually input information on multiple devices. And clearly, first of all, primarily on devices with smaller screens, and therefore you are running up against the danger of having a lot of people drop off at this stage and not actually get the personalized experience that enables you to deliver them whatever it is that you think the added value really lies in. Now, the solution that we've come up for that is called Sign In with Google. It's one of the many solutions in the family of federated login solutions. So look up what federated login actually means and how you can use that. You might have seen them before. You might have seen Sign In with Google. You might have seen Facebook Connect and others of this type, LinkedIn and so on. So there's multiple providers that give you the same advantages. I obviously, for obvious reasons, can focus on what Google is providing here. And then you'll see also from the next step, why is that important? Why is that connected? So here you solve the problem of security by relying on the security infrastructure of a much larger company that has dedicated years, sometimes tens of years, to creating a very robust and a strong security solution to protect the passwords and the accounts of the users that it has. And it shares those security, not so much the protocols, but that level of security with you. And of course, in terms of the quality of the accounts, you're much less likely, since you're getting a verified account that is actively engaged in the Google ecosystem, you're much less likely to get a malicious spammer or a user erroneously entering the wrong credentials to enter your system. Now, the next part of the process, the friction that I mentioned, is still not completely eliminated if you are just leveraging the federated login solution. We went a little bit further, one step further, to say, well, fair enough, if somebody's already using the benefits of security and quality of accounts by using the Google sign-in solution, why don't we enable them to go through the process of account creation and repeated sign-in even faster? You know, when you see this screen on any website that you visit, right, you immediately faced with questions. Which email did I use? What was the password again? Should I reset it? Or did I write it down somewhere? You solve that a little bit, as I said, by introducing a federated login button, such as sign in with Google, that in some ways enables the user to go through the process faster. But I'm still not sure. Do I have an account? Did I use this previously? Was it Google that I signed in with? Was it something else? Now I have a sign in button and a sign in with Google button. What is the real difference? Now, to avoid this kind of doubt and this kind of situation in the user's mind, you can do exactly what you're seeing on the next screen. You can allow users with an existing account that matches a Google account that we know of and that the browser and the operating system knows about to seamlessly re-enter your stream. Now you have full control here. You can do it seamlessly, or you can still offer the users the chance to click a button if they want to do it. But let me just zoom in for you here. Upon entering a web property, your users with an existing account, even if they've never visited your web property on this particular device, but as long as they're logged in and the operating system and the browser can identify them as somebody who has an account for your website, they will be introduced into a personalized experience on your web property in a matter of seconds without any additional actions. You can skip the sign-in screen completely. Now, of course, sign-in is just part of the problem. The larger, much larger part of the problem potentially is the sign-up process. I've mentioned it briefly. You see some numbers. It is not rocket science. It is quite obvious that once you start, and you've all experienced this, when you start encouraging users to create an account, you start seeing a significant drop-off rate because people are reluctant to enter additional details, reluctant to have to remember them in the future. You can solve part of this problem with autofill, and I do encourage all of you, at the very least, to explore how autofill works and what it does. But even here, you can, by introducing the very same solution of one-tap sign-up and auto-login, you can enable users not just to come back automatically, but actually to come in seamlessly the very first time that they visit your website. As long as Google recognizes, or whatever, not even Google, the browser or the operating system recognizes that they have a Google account, and if you actually leverage that API, that will present them the ability to just continue using your service using their Google credentials. It allows you to enable one-tap account creation in the context of the experience that you're creating for them, allowing them to completely understand what benefits they will get by creating an account, what is the interaction that you will offer them going onwards. We don't have that much time to go into the details of implementation. What I wanted to mainly mention about it is the fact that it's been widely used over the past year or so that we've introduced it with great success by a lot of amazing companies with amazing results that are hardly surprising at all, because obviously if you introduce a simplification to a process that has been such a pain for such a large number of users, you will see great results. And we're seeing again and again the number of signed-in users and the number of new signups go up and up, and in some cases by such ridiculous amounts as 43 times. Obviously, this means that a lot of us in multiple verticals can leverage the benefits of this approach, solve for friction by removing it completely with one tap, reduce the level of risk that you get, and get the same level of security as Google gives its users, get the same quality of accounts with engaged and active users that Google has confirmed previously. And instead of trying to do something horrible and complicated, use an API that is easy to implement and is absolutely free for everybody who wants to use it. You can learn more about it at our identity section of our developer documentation. And of course, I encourage you to, again, watch the Google Identity video from the recent I/O and ask your questions now, if you have any. I think with that pretty much sums up what I wanted to share with you today. And Aiden, it's up to you now to either start pestering me with questions or actually pass the word on.
I'm going to pester you with questions, Andrey. Sorry about that. Thank you for the talk. It was really, really good. And actually, it's got a bit of life to it, so it's always good fun for us to see things live and in action, as it were. There are two questions that are coming through a lot from the audience. And I know you're a guy who is a fan of self-described the big bets. So getting rid of the notion of sign up and sign in and user flows. And I think there are some people in the analytics community, I'm guessing they're in the analytics community by the tone of their question, that are kind of freaking out a little bit about their user flow reports that they've spent years looking at and figuring out. How will this all work in the world of user flows within our websites? Is it going to remove that for us? Is it going to simplify it for us? What's your word on it?
My vision is that it certainly will simplify things for us. And if you think about analytics in particular, the image that I get immediately in my head is that of funnels, right? Funnels and funnels and funnels of funnels into funnels. If you're an analytics kind of guy and your one dream has always been to collapse a couple of those funnels, now this is your chance. I mean, clearly, if what you like is to see users go through 10 or 15 hoops to get from A to B, then potentially this isn't for you. But I'm thinking that if you are actually working in close cooperation with your sales folks, and you probably have figured out by now that the fewer funnels you see and the fewer steps in the funnel, the better it is for the business. And here, I mean, we're not removing the ability to track anything by any means. We're not removing the ability to understand the impact of UI changes, to A/B test. In fact, I don't know, things from such simple things as the placement of the button to more complex things like the way you present the entire experience now that you're able to leverage it in such a way. I mean, you can think about things like, for example, if you're talking about physical delivery, we very often see the need to collect, well, at least I see companies asking me for my location and even my address before I even get to a point where I'm ready to check out. Whereas here, as we saw with Google Pay, since you get a lot of the information, such as my name, my delivery address, my payment credentials, all in one go, it saves you the need to bother me during the actual creative interaction whilst you're trying to get me to fill up my basket with the majority of the goods that I want. So yeah, right. So you can start thinking about this thing instead of thinking, oh, you know, what's the drop-off rate if we ask them for the address at this point? You can say, well, there will be no drop-off rate. We won't be asking them for their address. They'll just go from the product to the checkout.
Cool. Thank you very much, Andrey. And there is another question come in, but I think I'm going to save it a little bit for later. I think someone was at your talk in Paris at SMX, and they have a question for you, but I'm going to save it for a little bit later until we have the right moment to ask, or if you don't mind. But with that, I'm going to move on, not quickly at all, but very, 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 very excitedly to Elizabeth, because Elizabeth's going to talk about, of course, more on the acquisition end of things, and of course, talking about Google Express and so on. But I shan't, again, take the words out of Elizabeth's mouth either. But I would just ask, actually, and there are a couple of questions about this one for you, Andrey. When Elizabeth is talking, one ear on Elizabeth, and if you could maybe, if possible, just share those links in that slide deck that you've got on your Twitter feed, if that's possible. The audience are just asking for those as that extra collateral, so they can go off and watch those after this particular webinar, but not during this webinar. I warn you, audience, it is Elizabeth's time to shine. Elizabeth, please take to the stand, as it were.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So let me go ahead and share the presentation that I have for today. There we go. And there we go. How are we looking?
All good, Elizabeth? All good.
Oh.
We're now not sharing.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
We were go, and now we're not go.
Okay.
Give it a go again.
We were go. There we go. Awesome. So thank you so much. As Aiden said, I apparently have a thing for small animals and shopping carts. Mostly it has to do with the fact that I have to use stock photography.
Sorry,
my presentations.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but still we can't see your slides, I'm afraid. And I want them to see the small animals, to be perfectly honest.
Hang on. It didn't catch. There it goes.
Fabulous.
Okay,
Thank you so much. I'll be quiet now.
Oh, well, thank you. Otherwise, I would have gone, a good 5 minutes into this and no one would have known what small animals I was talking about. So let's start with puppies, everyone's favorite. But yes, it has to do mostly with the fact that I have to use stock photography for most things. And let's go ahead and move in. So I got the awesome intro there at the beginning. Thank you so much. This is just the bullets of that. And yes, that carpet is from the Portland airport. So for those of you that don't know, the Portland, Oregon airport is got an epic carpet, and it actually has its own Wikipedia page. So I actually took a picture of it since I just happened to be there the other day. Really quick, I have to say what a CommerceHub is, where I am as the Senior Director of E-Commerce Growth Services, which is the delightfully vague title that I have that kind of covers the paid search background that I have, and then more of the e-commerce background that I've started to accumulate in these last 3 years at CommerceHub. And depending, at your company, how you define e-commerce, you may have a different definition of whether or not that includes paid or advertising or however, or search engine marketing, whatever you might call it. But for CommerceHub, one of the things that we do is we have a huge dropship network. So we work with some of the largest retailers in the US and connect them to our network of 11,000 or so suppliers throughout the UK, the US, and Canada. And then we also have the demand side, which is what I work on, which is your Google, your Amazon, your Bing, your Facebook, and connecting our customers to those channels so that they can get their product catalogs up and selling wherever they may. So enough with me and enough with the CommerceHub. Let's get into some of the meat of the presentation. And I think one of the things that you're going to, this works out really well with Andrey's presentation as far as Google Pay, as you'll see when I get into the Google Express piece of the presentation. So first and foremost, these three numbers represent a few things: 1.6 billion, 27, and 80. 80 is about the number last year that Google made from advertising. 1.6 is Amazon, and 27 is Facebook. And when I say 1.6 billion for Amazon, that's not necessarily advertising. That was classified as quote unquote other income. So that could have other things in there. But I don't think that we can ignore that Amazon as a paid search person has become more and more of a question in the recent past, especially in these last couple of years. So why do we care as paid search people or e-commerce people in general? It's not new. Amazon advertising has been around for a while, or Amazon Marketing Services, Amazon Media Group, however you want to classify whichever group you're in, whether or not you're first party or third party. They have definitely found a way to make money within the Amazon.com platform selling advertising. And the volume of the advertising that they can offer is immense, between 300 million active customers and Prime members, but the amount of data that they have, the desktop. I mean, one of the things that we always lament about with Google Shopping is when you do product listing ads, the amount of people that click percentage-wise on a product, what did they actually buy? I haven't seen a whole lot of backed up studies for this, but in general, what we tend to say in the industry, it's about 30%. So about 30% of the time, people buy the thing that they actually clicked on. Well, Amazon doesn't have to wonder. They know. So in the Amazon universe in advertising, they not only know what you clicked on, but what you bought, what else you bought it with. Did you add it to a wish list? Did you search for it? Did you buy what kind of device? Where are you? That kind of stuff. That is immense. And with that, they have about 3 different ad types that you can use for, that's a third party or just kind of self-service. So you've got the sponsored products, which is probably the most powerful in terms of return on investment. That's the one that I see most often, quote unquote, winning. And part of it is I kind of liken it to Facebook's dynamic retargeting, because there is already an engagement piece in there in that you have to be winning the buy box. So for those that don't know, the buy box is that yellow button on the right side when you're on a Amazon product detail page. It says add to cart. If you're winning that, it's like being on the first page of the Google search results. Nobody, usually it's like less than 5% that click through to view other sellers or that click through the second page of results. If you're winning the buy box, you can have a sponsored product show up. And it is structured almost exactly like AdWords. It basically, UI-wise and everything, it looks like AdWords 2010. You got campaigns, ad groups, keywords, match types, negatives, but it's not nearly as complex as AdWords can be, depending on obviously how you do it. But also the search functionality and what surfaces up is a little bit different as well. So Amazon tends to gear towards results that search results that have things like sales velocity, so the item's a really good seller, or product margin, so how much money will Amazon make from it. Whereas Google focuses a bit more on users' search intent and query and previous behavior. The other ad type you have is headline search ads, so that is also a campaign-based keyword type of advertising. It's an auction-based system, again, similar to AdWords, but you don't have people in the buy box. You can do like conquesting campaigns where you're trying to show up on competitor product pages. And those only have about 3, and I'll have a picture here in a second. And then they have product display ads, which is very similar to the display network today. So you are doing campaigns, ad groups, keywords, but you're putting up like banner ads, and these can show on additional Amazon properties like IMDb. So here's kind of what they look like if you haven't seen them, but they can also obviously appear on Amazon.com all over the place. And so one of the things that always kind of bothers me about the Amazon advertising universe and just the danger of it is Amazon is often in the auction with you. So Amazon has a lot of options where they do first-party sales or they do fulfilled by Amazon or FBA, where it's in their best interest to show the item that's most likely to sell as it benefits them. It's almost like if you would imagine that Google were in the auction, the Google shopping auction with you. And if that doesn't terrify you, it should. The other reason is Amazon also makes their own products. So I'm sure if you haven't taken a look at like the Amazon Basics line, you'll see that those are very, very prevalent in certain categories. And it was very, very meticulous which categories they chose to make those products and be in. For example, batteries. Batteries they're able to manufacture and sell at fraction of the cost in which you would see your Duracells and your Energizers. You go to Amazon, you can get your cheap batteries. Amazon keeps everything, and Duracell and Energizer don't. So keeping that in mind. So as we kind of move through the paid search landscape, Amazon's got their advertising platform. It's been up for a few years now. It's really starting to carry steam. And what's happening, I'm seeing more and more is search agencies or search practitioners are being asked to manage these campaigns because you think, well, it's similar enough. They've got keywords, they've got campaigns. Maybe I can use the same things. Yes and no. What I also have at the end of this deck is a list of resources for some Amazon-specific keyword tools and articles to take a look at, because they're not one and the same. They are similar, but the way that the Amazon search algorithm works is different than the way that Google works. It's the way that the auction works is different. The advertising types are different. So while there are things that carry on back and forth, they don't necessarily mirror one another. The other comparison I can make to that is when social advertising popped up on the scene. So when Facebook started selling advertising space, Twitter, Polyvore, Pinterest, those guys, then the question became, does a social media person manage this, or does a paid search person manage this? Somebody who does like Google, Bing, Yahoo classics, been around. And then we have the same question now for marketplace. Because a lot of companies, depending on how they've defined e-commerce and how they've structured, may have a marketplace team that works directly with Amazon or eBay and Walmart and takes care of what the listings are, what the product assortment looks like, what's up there, what's not, what's selling. And the question is, do they also handle the advertising piece, or do you bring in your advertising team? And I think that brings us next to shopping actions on Google Express. I've been told to be very, very clear about that. And this is where I start to see a tension in our industry as far as like who will manage this, because this is Google, but it is also similar to a marketplace, the way it's going to work. So let me walk into a little bit of it here. So to be really clear, shopping actions are everywhere. So a shopping action is not relegated to the Google Express platform. Google Express just happens to be what I would call the physical manifestation of the product catalog. So you can go to the Express website, you can download the app, you can flip through about 70 different retailers and brands and see what catalogs or assortments that they have curated and posted on Google Express. Now, what happens after this is the shopping action itself is what matters. So the shopping action is the technology. It's what used to be purchases on Google, or the buy button. That was an experiment a couple years ago. And this links up into what Andrey was talking about Google Pay and how that seamless, frictionless transaction happens. This technology is connected to that. So Google Assistant, you have I have them on my Samsung device. I may have on my Google Home device. Okay, Google, buy me the thing. That transaction takes place. It's all of the order management handling. So it's the receipt, the acknowledgement, the shipping confirmation, all of that. And that is different because Google didn't do that before. So now Google's handling all those pieces the same way that Amazon or eBay would when you buy from one of their marketplaces. The other thing that's happening is if you look on the far right, this is called a sponsored shopping unit on search. So some of the PLA real estate is now being given to Google Express listings. So when you click on that, it will take you to express.google.com and it will show you a retailer that is selling that item. Now, what you don't know is who that seller is going to be, not all until you get there. So in this screenshot, it's showing it's Target, but there are some where it just is Google Express as the seller instead of where it says Target. You click on it, you click through, and then you'll see who the seller is going to be. And like I was saying, it's all about the transaction. So the payment processing, the order taking, the receipt, customer support. That's a big deal on this one too. So if a customer has a return through Google Express or through using a shopping action, Google is now handling that customer return as first-tier customer support. You still have your customer support team involved as far as tier 2 goes. But for the most part, it does take a piece of the load off in terms of managing this process. So like I was saying, so tier 1 customer support, single seamless checkout, new revenue stream. You still have to have Google Merchant Center. And so that's what I was talking about a little bit about who manages this, because it does use the Google Shopping feed with a few additional attributes through the Google Merchant Center. So now you're in there and the advertising team, let's say you were on the marketplace team and you wanted to be live with this, and you have the relationship with the merchandising team and you've curated the assortment. Well, the advertising team may now want you in their Google Merchant Center account. You'll have to work together. Order management is required. So that means that you have to be able to work with Google directly or through a third party to handle the integration piece. So being able to work with the Orders API and send the information back and forth. And it is very much like a marketplace experience. And if you look there on the right, I have a couple of screenshots. You'll notice that the departments are pretty high level. So electronics, home and garden, very different from the Google Shopping experience in terms of that taxonomy. That is very intentional. That is meant to mimic more of a store feel and look and kind of encourage you to browse and continue to basket build. So going back to how this affects paid search, so what about Google product listing ads? So like I was saying earlier, okay, we're now giving away some of that real estate for product listing ads from that 6 or 9 pack to Google Express. So in this example here, I have the Google Express as the seller. So what this means is, so first of all, Express listings don't participate in the PLA auction. They are separate. The unit, the shopping actions search sponsored unit, may show when there's inventory in Express. However, if the seller also has a product eligible for both, so let's say I'm Mrs. Myers and I also have an AdWords account and I'm also trying to drive traffic to mrsmyers.com, they're not going to compete with each other. So Google would dedupe for that specific SKU. It is supposed to be complementary and increased impression share. And I can say that I have tried on multiple occasions to try and trip this up, because whenever Google says, yo, we totally have this, I of course want to try and break it. And I've tried on multiple occasions and I cannot get a duplicate SKU to show up. So they're honest on that one. And then what does this mean overall? So it means that your product data permeates even further than you ever thought it would. So one of the things to note is the product titles and description. So again, if you're using Google Merchant Center and you're uploading a Google Shopping feed, there's only about 4 additional attributes that you have to provide to be able to do Google Express, aside from the order integration. That means it's reusing a lot of the Google Shopping information. So product titles and descriptions are the biggest ones. You'll have identical on Shopping and Express, and then prices. So the prices are also fed the same. The other thing is product reviews. So product reviews for Google Shopping are culminated from all over the place. It could be from like Trustpilot or Stella Service, one of the partners. It could be scripted put in. It could have been uploaded by a retailer or a brand through Google Merchant Center also. But just know that those product reviews show up now on both Google Shopping and on Express. So if you don't have a product review program in place, you might want one. And then user behavior. So this brand affinity, customer loyalty, this is going to continue on through Google Express. So one of the things that Express does is it recognizes previous behaviors. So if you have shown brand affinity or you've already started a basket, let's say with Whole Foods, and there's a couple things in it, they're more likely to show you search results or items that are also from Whole Foods so you can finish building your basket. But also, let's say that I had let's say I was an Ulta customer and I had an Ultimate Rewards card. I can link that to my Google Express account, and Express is then going to start showing me more things related to that so that I can continue to build my customer loyalty with Ulta. And then the other piece that doesn't often get talked about much is these product detail pages that you set up in Google Express. They are getting indexed, and they do so in the search results. So very similar to the same way that Amazon's product detail pages get shown up in the search index as well. I mean, to be fair, that's a pretty good template. They've got a lot of features, fits, bullets, reviews, tons of content, sometimes video on those pages. Well, Express is doing a similar thing. So like I kept saying, who's going to manage this? That is the question. And so here I sit as a paid search person who's learning about the marketplace. Google doesn't call it a marketplace, but it's sure acting like one. So the question is, like, how do you have search people that learn marketplace, or do you have marketplace people that learn search? So I always come back to, all right, well, then you need to define what e-commerce means within your company. It's deciding how you're going to run this. So marketplace experts can give you a lot more information on, for example, seller ratings. The Google Express does have retailer ratings. And so you are going to care about those in the future because it will influence where you may show up in search results and how often. Marketplace tends to know a lot about inventory allocation and fulfillment. As a paid search person, I had to learn quite a bit about how that works, and latency and safety stock and all those kind of buffers. With paid search, mostly what you do, you sell it. You just get out there and you sell it until they tell you to turn it off. Taxes. So we haven't had to do as much with taxes previously or worry about that. And again, understanding the difference between a marketplace search result and marketplace content and what gets provided there. And then paid search experts. We're still very much in the game here as far as when it comes to managing marketplace paid search. So we've got the experience when it comes to spending money. There's something about when you spend somebody else's money, stuff gets real very fast. The complaints come fast and furious. So you want to make sure that you have somebody that knows how to spend the money, understands conversion rate optimization, geography, personas, where the customers are, how do they buy, how does that work with search engine results. And then, like I said, I have one slide, and what I will do is I will save this on SlideShare, and I will tweet out the deck as well. So I do have a few resources here at the end that I think will be helpful. So if you're a paid search person that's new to marketplaces, I recommend a few things here to take a look at. So there's the Amazon SEO guide, Marketplace Pulse, which is a website that does all of the marketplaces, just a newsletter, super quick. There's an Amazon keyword tool, and Amazon has a YouTube channel that they use to teach you how to spend your money on Amazon. And then for shopping actions, the Google blog has a shopping action specific post from March. I wrote an article on shopping actions in Google Express on Search Engine Journal, and then the Google Merchant Center help, they add an article, I swear, every week. So every week that I've gone back and looked, there's been something new in there. So I recommend just keeping an eye on it and refreshing and taking the trip through there. And that is it.
Cool. Thank you very much for that, Elizabeth. And also, to be honest, thank you for really saving the paid search people there at the end, because I'm a paid search person. And I think, oh God, we're all screwed. But of course, we got there, which was good. One really interesting question came in for you, actually, from Twitter, rather than from the direct live audience on YouTube. And it is around this kind of FMCG space. And you talked a bit about deduplication of advertising and things like that. And I'm not going to name the name of the FMCG in question, but we'll call them Swiss. Let's say they're Swiss, for argument's sake. And they're talking about search engines being one thing. So, of course, our usual, our Google, our Baidu, our Yandex, our Bings. They're talking about platforms being another thing. So that's our YouTube, our app stores, our mobile assistant, our Facebook search. And then they're talking about really essentially what would be e-retail search, marketplace search. So your Amazons, your Criteos, Alibaba, Walmart, and of course also Google again here in the marketplace context. Where should we put the money? What do we do? Are we gonna get in a lot of trouble? And as you say, fast and furious complaints raining from upon high. What's your go-to get out of jail card on that one?
So really what it is it depends on what you sell and who you sell it to and where you can get it more than anything else. So I strip away the places and the things and think about, for example, some brands don't want to be on Amazon. That's a whole other kettle of, that's a big business decision. But maybe they're more comfortable being on Google Express because they already sell on AdWords, and that's a good gateway for them to try out a marketplace. And then when it comes to platforms, it's like, okay, well, do I need to be on YouTube, or am I just being on YouTube to be on YouTube? Or am I going to do it to have some sort of engagement? Again, who am I selling to? Where are they at? And can I get it to them? And I would pull it all back to those 3 questions and then decide, okay, so if I know that I want to sell to somebody in Switzerland and I want to sell them these blue widgets and I can ship there within a week, is that acceptable? Okay, so what are the platforms that are going to allow me to do that? So Amazon, maybe not so much because they want that 2-day delivery, but maybe eBay. Maybe, and then Google Shopping, those would be good. And maybe I need to have a video that explains how to use the blue widget. And that's where I use again with the AdWords piece. So again, there's those 3 big questions.
Cool, thanks so much, Elizabeth. And I mean, you're absolutely right. It is go back to basics in some ways. What the hell are you trying to achieve? Full stop. What does that look like? I know, right? It's complicated and it's also basic at the same time.
Well, you always want to take the bubble wrap off everything, right? So it's new. So you're like, well, we got to test it. We got to test everything. They're always telling me to test everything. So
we'd love a bit of conversion rate optimization. And actually, you got another question about conversion rate optimization, but I'm going to save her for later, if you don't mind, because I know that Kevin's just kind of hanging around there now in the background. He's dying to go. I can see it in his eyes. So I'm going to pass it over to Kevin to talk, of course, more about the organic search end of things. But a huge thank you, Elizabeth. And if you would be so kind as to share those slides on SlideShare or in any other channel of your choice, I'm sure the audience would appreciate it. And I can see they do because they're thanking you live. Kevin, take her away.
Awesome. Sounds good. Awesome. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. You just need to present.
Awesome. Cool. So a little bit about me. That was in the introductions. My name is Kevin Jones. I'm the SEO manager for BigCommerce. I also dabble a little bit in freestyle rapping. My name for freestyle rapping is TB Jones. It stands for tuberculosis because I'm sick. So it's possible that we might have a little freestyle rap after this, but right now we're going to talk a little bit about e-commerce SEO content, and I'm going to give you an example of some e-commerce SEO content that I think is really a low-hanging fruit opportunity for a lot of businesses, regardless of size, and can help you drive additional sales. Cool. So a little bit about this. So using blog content to drive e-commerce sales. What this is going to do is drive additional targeted organic traffic. It's going to allow you to push customers to product pages to drive new sales. And it's also going to potentially play a role in helping you get link acquisition, which obviously is going to help organic rankings overall and drive additional traffic. So this is an example of content that I highly suggest creating for your website, for your e-commerce website. And this would be best/top targeted content. And a big benefit of this is it's going to capture informational intent that you can't capture with product pages necessarily. So here are a few examples of some of these search queries and content that is actually ranking for the featured snippet. And that's actually one of the huge benefits of creating blog posts like this for things like best golf pants, for example. You have the opportunity to actually get that featured snippet, and you're going to get the benefits of ranking, not ranking #1, but you're going to get the benefits of actually ranking organically #1. So there's a huge opportunity to really improve your organic click-through rate as well as the number of visitors coming to your website. And this is an example right here from a company called hicksmagazine.com. They're talking about best golf pants, and you see it's listing out 7 of the best golf pants for men. And an interesting thing about this in general, here's another example for best golf putters. And again, it's listing out all these best golf putters according to 2golfguys.com. And the interesting thing about this is for golf, for example, in the golf space, the main competitors are companies like Dick's Sporting Goods and Golf Galaxy and PGA Tour Superstore. You'll notice in a lot of these instances, those guys who are the e-commerce websites aren't actually creating this content. So it's really an opportunity for someone to jump on that and create that content that is going to drive people to the kind of the best golf putters, the best top whatever type of search query, and get them to that page to really help drive to your actual products. Here's another example, and you can get more and more granular with this. That's also the beauty of it. So for example, right here, we have best golf clubs for seniors, and you can get even deeper into that as well. Another one, best kids golf clubs, for example. Again, you can go even further with that. You can go with best golf clubs for girls, stuff like that, and really dig into that. And again, the beauty of this is you're creating content that is really informational to the user, and you also have the opportunity to get that featured snippet at the same time. A few more examples. This one's also including 2018. So I highly would recommend as well, including 2018 in your content and targeting that keyword as well, or whatever the year is for that specific year. And the benefit of this is a lot of times other pages aren't targeting this, so it could be a really big opportunity to get the click from those type of terms that people aren't necessarily putting in there. And oftentimes it's a lot easier to rank for the 2018 compared to the just the regular term like best golf shirts, for example. So it could be a major win to get that search traffic as well. And again,
okay, we're back. We're so sorry. For that. There was a ghost in the machine, unfortunately. And we managed to, of course, talk for a little while, but Kevin didn't talk too much. And I made note of where he was at, slide 12, Kevin, slide 12. But we are, of course, extremely apologetic that that happened. But indeed, beyond our control somewhat. And of course, very grateful that you've come back to join us for the remainder of Kevin's talk, of which, of course, naturally, you're going to have to be extra specially kind to Kevin, because that's fair, I think, at this particular point. But again, our most heartfelt, sincere apologies on behalf of us all, but indeed, of course, beyond our control. And without further ado, I'm going to let Kevin proceed with his awesome talk, and indeed so that you can get some of the top learnings that he's got to give to you. So once again, Kevin, let her rip. I'm sorry, Kevin, you're on mute, my friend. Just take yourself off mute there.
Awesome. So we were talking about the opportunities for creating content for things like best golf clubs and things of that nature, top golf clubs. And now I'm going to talk about get back into content creation tips for these types of blog posts. So these are the things to remember when creating content like this. So the keyword research, and that's the first thing we're going to talk about. Long form content usually wins. Keeping the snippet in mind, semantic search is important. Optimize the search for CTR, and link building is generally going to be needed. But going back into the keyword research aspect of this, so really where a lot of the low-hanging fruit opportunity to find ideas for content is in Google Search Console. A lot of times you can see what search queries are getting clicks and impressions that are related to these best/top types of search queries. So for example, you might be ranking number 50 for best golf clubs, let's say, for a page that doesn't really have the chance to rank for it. It's not going to rank for a while. So that might be an opportunity to take that idea and create it into a new piece of content. And then one of the benefits of that as well is if one of those pages that is ranking is a thin piece of content, you could actually take that content and redirect it to your new blog post to give it extra page authority. And that could help you rank that page even quicker. So there's a lot of opportunity in there, a lot of low-hanging fruit. Google Search Console is really a gold mine for ways to get content to rank for. The next thing I would suggest is reverse engineering top ranking content using tools like Semrush, Ahrefs. That's going to be your bread and butter for that. Just seeing what pages are ranking currently and seeing what type of content they have and what search queries they're ranking for. And that's going to help you figure out exactly how you want to write your content, seeing what's working, and using, you want to reinvent the wheel and make better content, but a lot of it you can actually get ideas from. And I think the ultimate goal for that during the competitive research is that you should be able to try to create content that is better than the top ranking pages. It's a simple thing to say, but if you do have the best result in there, you do have a better chance to rank for sure. The next thing I want to talk about is optimizing for the CTR and the SERPs. So a few things you can do here is I would definitely recommend including date. or date and year in there. The year especially, it's going to show the user that this is a current piece of content and entice them to click on it. And also including the month is also a good idea as well. This is going to allow you to, again, show that this is current content, and it's going to often entice the user to click on it, and it should potentially help click-through rates. It's definitely worth testing out for sure, but it does have a lot of opportunity. And then just doing the usual things for the meta description, enticing the user to click on the page, trying to include the search queries you're targeting whenever possible to get the bolded keywords, all the usual stuff, but with the addition of getting that 2018 or whatever year that is. And I also recommend getting the June in there or whatever the month is as well. And then also sometimes any kind of call to action is also helpful as well. In this case, it's to consider buying. Not the most enticing in the world, but anything you do to kind of make it a little bit more unique and interesting could potentially help you get more clicks. So really focusing on that, I think, has a lot of potential for sure to help you get more traffic to that page. The next thing you definitely want to think about semantic search for sure, making sure you're answering the search query that the person is looking for. One big thing that has a lot of success when I'm creating content is having supporting keywords in there. I use tools like Market Muse, for example, and you could use LSI Graph to get related topics that are related to this specific piece of content that you're creating, and also include that in there as well. So let's take the example of best golf pants. You probably want to include something about hitting golf clubs, golf polos, potentially. Anything that's kind of related to those search terms should be included in there, so we can kind of correlate it to the to what makes sense to actually rank it for that search query. And a lot of times you're going to want to include popular products. So whatever the popular golf shirts are, for example, if possible, getting those brands in there to some extent is always going to be helpful to show that it's correlated to what the searcher is actually looking for, especially if the other search queries are also showing that. It's definitely something I would recommend. And then also targeting related keywords, so golf club, golf pants, potentially like long golf pants, stuff like that, and just mentioning these things, golf pants for men potentially, and kind of figuring out how you can incorporate those keywords in there as well. Here's an example of some of the keywords from a tool called Market Muse I like. So right here, it's suggesting actually including some of these supporting keywords. So breathable fabric, you might want a very breathable golf pant, for example, or golf shirt. Polo shirt, I think that's a product right there. It says mention discounts. So these tools can really help you add these related keywords to make your content more in depth and really help answer that searcher's query. So that's something I highly recommend doing when you're creating this top/best type of blog post. Again, this tool is very helpful too. Word count, I mentioned before, is a pretty big factor. A lot of times you see the more in-depth a blog post is, oftentimes it's going to rank higher. So you want to make sure that you are sufficiently answering the question. It doesn't necessarily have to be the highest word count. I think really what to strive for is just to make sure that you are answering this search query as best as possible, and it should be in the range of what's considered number one. So that's something I would definitely focus on as well, and kind of analyzing all these pages, seeing what they're doing right, and make sure you're at least doing that, and you should definitely strive to do it better. And then also one thing to think about too, we talked about the featured snippets for these pages. But when creating this content, I would also recommend keeping those in mind. So to do that, there's definitely a lot of articles about this for best practices to help you attain the featured snippets. Goal one, obviously, is going to be to get to page one, which we'll talk about in a second, with link building as being a major factor in this, but also making sure you have clean HTML structure that Google can easily pull for that snippet. So that's something I would focus on, is actually making sure that the structure of the content is very easy for Google to be able to pull to that snippet and answer that search query. And then also make sure that you are answering that search query better than anybody else to get that snippet potentially. Last thing I want to talk about is you can make the best content in the world, but if you're not on page one, especially at this point, because there's a feature snippet opportunity, you're not necessarily going to get that ranking. So link building is essential for sure. And I think a lot of times people overthink this a little bit when there's a lot of low-hanging fruit opportunities people can use. So things like having partners linked to your new blog post, or friends, any organizations you work with. I know a lot of times people work with charities, maybe something kind of correlated to a blog post on a charity, and then you do a link to the best golf clubs or favorite golf clubs by people type of thing. It's really just kind of being sort of like creative about it with your partners, and then really just asking. A lot of times just asking is really going to allow you to get a link to these pages. And it's really as simple as that. So that's something to consider for sure. And those links are definitely going to boost the possibility of you getting to page one. And then it's going to help you because you have the good content you're focusing on, getting the snippets and semantic search and all that. It is possible that you could grab that snippet for sure. The next thing I would do is I would do a competitor analysis on all of the pages that are currently ranking. So use a tool, see what backlinks they have, see if there's any opportunity to replicate them. And it could also be an opportunity to come up with similar websites to target that aren't necessarily those ones, but you can do a link building campaign, be it for kind of a resource section or a guest post campaign, whatever strategy you want to use. A competitor analysis can help you figure that out and then build links directly to that page. And yeah, also another kind of underutilized way to go about it too is to just hit up the pages that are ranking on the top page, maybe the top 20. And a lot of times, because they want to make their content even better, it's often possible to get a link to those pages as well. So again, it's just really about being creative and coming up with ways to get those links to that page. Because again, you want to get to page one, or you're not going to have that opportunity to get that snippet, and you just want to get as much domain authority as possible to those specific pages, or page authority. And another cool tip that can be utilized with this as well, opportunity to create video content to supplement the blog content. So the cool thing about this is there's a huge opportunity for more time on site if you embed it on the page. So that could definitely help your rankings for sure. Keep people on the page. It's not a direct ranking factor, but I know there's sometimes correlation to time on page and bounce rate and things like that. So that's huge for sure. And then you could drive additional traffic via YouTube, do a YouTube SEO campaign and really go into that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to take these types of blog posts and use them in other areas. So it's definitely something to think about as well, as in this case, YouTube. Lastly, I'm just going to summarize how to dominate e-commerce content in this specific example of one strategy you might want to use. You just want to target informational terms with the best content. You want to optimize for supporting keywords, semantic keywords, and you really need to build links. And start with the easy ones, and then from there, kind of get more creative and try to build as many links as possible to it, and just really build the page authority of that page. But yeah, that concludes it.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And again, sorry for interrupting your presentation, but I'm glad that the audience, hello audience once again, that the audience stayed for it, obviously, because naturally that was cool stuff. A couple of questions came in actually for you. I'm going to kind of pitch them at Elizabeth and you as well, but I'll do you first, Kevin, if that's okay, just, you know, because since you're already live. A lot of people are asking about voice search, okay? And you talked about, of course, featured snippets and dominating, as it were. Featured snippets appear to go hand in hand with ranking for voice searches. We're talking something like 40%, something like that. The Google stats suggest a voice results being returned being of the rich snippet variety. Going to be an issue for sites without schema markup, without the technical stuff, or will Google be pulling answers from the long form content that you talked about in your talk? Tricky question.
Yeah, good question. So I think it's going to be on a case by case basis. So from what I've seen, there's really a lot of opportunity in the long form content, and really having good HTML structure that Google can easily pull that information. That's always going to be a plus for sure. I think it's just having good HTML to make it easy for Google to crawl that and then get it in that snippet. That's a big thing for sure. In terms of structured data markup, I'm not a big believer in it for this specifically. Obviously, it's huge for like products and stuff like that, and reviews and recipes and things like that. But from what I've seen, it's somewhat anecdotal. I haven't seen a big return on actually doing like article structured data markup and stuff like that. But at the same time, I do think like it's not a bad thing. If you have the resources to do it and you want to implement it, it's not going to be something that's going to like hurt you. So I would recommend it for sure. But I really think at this point, at least, it's going to be having content that answers the person's search query, and then making sure it's organized in a way that Google can easily pull that information to get that snippet. And then you also want to make sure that you are ranking on page 1, because you're not going to have the opportunity to get that snippet if you don't have that.
Which is a fair point of truth, really. And to kind of to build on that a little bit, Elizabeth, if you don't mind, what's voice search going to mean then in terms, of course, of things like Google Express? Does the little guy have a chance, or is it going to be, you know, the most obvious first return result that we're looking at here?
So little guys totally have a chance. So you've got the big retailers in there, you've got your Targets, your Walmarts, your Costco's, that kind of thing. But when you look at, for example, if you just search for a product on Google Express, you'll notice that there's more than one search result. And so they will put in some of the smaller guys, and the smaller guys can win on price point. So if they are, you know, the similar price point or less, and then eventually seller ratings start to come in a retailer standard. So if they have if they're top rated seller, you know, Google Express wants them to have a good experience the same way that Amazon honors their seller rating. So that's going to be a factor for them to be able to get in there as well. And then if they have a loyalty program, so if you connected, even if they were a smaller guy and you just had a smaller loyalty program and you put it in there and connect it, it all helps.
And there's a lot of actually additional bells and whistles, as you call them, Elizabeth, bells and whistles within the Google Express infrastructure, credits for friends and so on. Are any of those going to be really valuable in the future, do you think, or at the minute are they kind of teething in training?
It's early stuff. I think it's stuff to help make people be sticky. So, for example, being able to create, you know, shopping lists for either various stores or just things, and obviously that connects to your Google device. They also have a lot of, you know, Google's making significant investment in this program. So if you go on the site today, you'll probably see a 20% off coupon for your first order. That's everybody. And then they also have additional discounts for if you refer somebody. So if I send you a code and I refer you and you buy something, then I get a small kickback as well.
So you're saying that you're going to give me money for free. Is that what you're telling me, Elizabeth?
Basically.
Shall I expect that in my email inbox soon? One for
Well,
Kevin.
and then Google is also given their customer support team. So what Andrey was talking about, the Google Pay, when they merged Google Wallet and Android Pay, they built a customer support team to go with that. And so it's a very similar model for Express. So those Express customer support folks have capabilities to do stuff to make the Express experience worth it.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. And a question kind of for both of you, sort of to kind of wrap things up, I guess, in the absence of Andrey, of course, for the two of you, really. And I think it's always interesting for the audience because there's a huge amount we can do in e-commerce, fair to say. We have a river of questions flowing in from both instances of course, of our YouTube Live experience. And really, the kind of core thing that's coming through here in the end is, well, what should I do now? All this information is amazing. Thank you so much for it. And actually quite a lot of shout outs. And then even actually from Googlers for you, Elizabeth. Now I know how Google Express works for the first time ever. So I would call that a big win. And Kevin, of course, your content getting a lot of love as well. So the question really is, what if you were, you were given free reign to do as you pleased in the e-commerce space, given all the changes that are in play, everything kind of, I mean, Google's working on AR and VR for e-commerce at the moment. What would you do? What's your kind of Shangri-La? What's your ideal? What does your perfect e-commerce experience look like? And if you'd be so kind, would you kick us off, Kevin, in answering that question?
Sure. I think I'm going to start off with, so I'm kind of going to come from this from sort of an SEO perspective, but also a user experience perspective. So user experience is obviously the first thing that you need to focus on. And that's going to include things like fast page speed, for example, which is going to correlate with better rankings. But definitely focus on page speed and being able to help the user actually convert into a customer and get that sale and easily do that. That's always going to be the number one thing for sure. And then in terms of SEO, driving SEO traffic, what I would really focus on is I talk about low-hanging fruit a lot. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in Google Search Console for a lot of these companies to just see kind of what's teetering on the edge of actually ranking, but they're not really doing anything to optimize it, and seeing clicks, impressions, stuff like that. I think digging into Google Search Console is something I would highly suggest to really anybody, enterprise, mid-market, small business type of companies, and see where those low-hanging fruit opportunities are, kind of jump on those to kind of drive more traffic to it. And then really just once you have that, once you kind of take care of the low-hanging fruit opportunities, I'm a big fan of content. Obviously, you want to take care of the technical aspects of everything. but just really figuring out what content can actually drive customers to your website that have the intent to actually convert. And then if you do have a good website that is a good user experience and they are able to convert, it's a good investment for sure.
Amazing, thanks, Kevin, for that. Elizabeth, would you build on that? Would you agree? Would you have a slightly different angle? Would you care to share?
Absolutely, but I'd pull it back a few levels. So one of the things that we're seeing more than anything else is everybody's kind of coming in midstream because, you know, new thing happens. And like I was saying earlier, is going back to the beginning and saying, okay, you know, we have some of these more legacy businesses. You know, look at what happened to like Toys R Us, the retailer. Like, why did that fail? Why did, you know, they had the brick and mortar piece. They had it's not just Amazon. It's not just competition. There were other influences, and it's a matter of whether or not your company is aligned to be able to do some of these new things. So it'd be really cool, yes, to have them on Express, and yes, you would want to have them, you know, adopt all the things they're supposed to do. But we also don't go back and say what are the priorities against what it is that we're actually trying to do. And honestly, the biggest thing I see is the folks need to do is go back to the core company culture and say, okay, you know, where do we want to be? How do we want to be there? And then it's a lot easier from a paid search perspective to figure out where to spend the money. Because otherwise, yeah, you can just keep pumping money into Google AdWords and you keep on Facebook, and then, you know, 3 years from now they're like, well, the numbers aren't as good, and you're like, well, yeah, it was a finite audience. At some point, they move around and they move on, and if you're not doing the right attribution, how did you know where they went?
Amazing. And I'm not going to dive into attribution now, 92 minutes in for sure. But I really want to. Andrey, slip of the tongue earlier, said in the next 90 hours we'll be talking about e-commerce. And I'm absolutely certain that we could do it for 90 hours, but we're not. So count yourselves very lucky, I suppose, YouTube audience. Just one more thing, I suppose, before we depart this particular webinar. I want to know where we can see you next. Elizabeth, if we were to see you, any blogs coming up, any talks coming up, social media?
I just finished SMX Advanced last week, so I do have a presentation that is only on shopping actions with Google Express on SlideShare now, and I will tweet out the link for the one from today, and if obviously you're already there, then it's pretty easy to find. But as far as that goes, I'm actually probably pretty much done, except for Twitter this year, because I am due with baby number 2 in September.
Congratulations.
So I'm gonna take a little bit of time off at the end of this year.
I think that is probably okay. But I mean, if you want to do a webinar, then you know you can do a webinar with baby. Kevin, where will we see you, my friend? What's the score?
Yeah, good question. So I'm not super active on the social medias. You can. I'm trying to get direct mail back, so sending me letters would be the way. No, I'm just kidding. But you could definitely email me at kevin.jones@BigCommerce if you have any SEO questions. I'm more than happy to answer that for sure. I blog every once in a while at BigCommerce, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kevin and Elizabeth. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And again, I'm really sorry, Kevin, specifically, for interrupting your amazing talk. I'm really sorry, audience, also specifically, for interrupting your flow. You're writing furiously, I'm sure, and then suddenly it all stopped. And then you had to take a little break, have a cup of tea, and wait for Kevin to come back, which Kevin did, because that is dedication, my friends. Indeed, this was an eventful event, as we did promise one way or another. We've had the carpet of Portland Airport. We learned lots about Google Express. We learned a ton of things about Google Pay, which frankly will probably change the game. And Kevin taught you how to be kick-ass at SEO. I think that is pretty much a win. You know, and much like every journey, there are bumps along the way, but we appreciate that you stuck with us. And indeed, we are very sorry that it did indeed happen. But without further ado, really, I wish and I hope that you would join me, quite simply, YouTube audience, in thanking very wholeheartedly both Kevin and Elizabeth for putting so much effort and so much time into this webinar and bringing so much value, quite frankly, to you and indeed to us all over the past 94 minutes. So a big thank you, Elizabeth, and indeed to Kevin. And with that, I have nothing very really left to say beyond have a great day wherever you're at, indeed from Texas to Tokyo. Wherever you're at in the world, enjoy what remains of your day. Thank you very much for coming to this SEMrush webinar, and we hope, of course, indeed, to see you very soon indeed. Give us a wave there, Kevin and indeed Elizabeth. Ciao, everybody. Take care. Have a good one. Thanks so much for coming.